Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Tuesday, December 27th, 2022. I'm your host, George Kirk, joined by Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap. Guys, I hope you had a great holiday with your family and friends and whoever you had hung out with, and hope you had a great fantasy week as well.
No,
Good, I didn't either. The
Cody,
fantasy part.
your wire is out again. Lovely fact. Uh, One thing Cody should have asked for Christmas was a new wire for his headset, new cable for his headset, but he did not. So we might hear him go in and out this podcast.
No, he's
Yeah.
not back. He also looks very unamused as he's sitting here. We'll just go through the intro without him and we'll figure it out. So today on the show, we're going to hit some NFL news and notes. We're going to do some quotes of the week. We're going to break down the Week 17 streamer wire because there's no more sitting on people. It's just if you're picking them up, you probably going to play them. And we're going to break down Thursday Night Football, maybe to Tyler's demise, the Dallas Cowboys traveling to the Tennessee Titans. Make sure you find us on thecouchgms.com and our social media channels, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at the Couch GMs, and join our Discord chat. The link is in the description of the video or podcast you're watching or listening to. Man, it's been a while since I messed that one up. But all right, guys, let's jump into NFL news. Leading off NFL news, not a really loaded news segment, but the big one, the Denver Broncos fired their less than 1 year in head coach Nathaniel Hackett. We were calling for this at times back in like weeks 4 and 5. It never really got any better for Denver, and then they got absolutely obliterated by Baker Mayfield. So I think it was time. And it's funny that the person he brought in to help him with clock management and all these other coaching situations is now taking over for him as the interim head coach.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to see Nathaniel Hackett go. I do think there was how much was he brought in? If we think back to last offseason, how much was he brought in to try to lure Aaron Rodgers? That was like a big landing spot for him. And it is also worth noting that their defensive coordinator was actually offered the interim head job first. He said, no, thank you, because he's really good friends with Nathaniel Hackett. He didn't want to take over for 2 weeks. But that Broncos defense, I know it didn't look like that on Christmas, has been a top team, and he's expected to get head coaching opportunities, and he's going to interview for the Broncos job next year as well. But it was kind of cool for him to be like, hey, that was my friend. I'm going to respect him. I'm going to stick with the defense. It's only 2 weeks, and I'll try again next year. So shout out to him.
Yeah, Broncos suck.
Let's ride.
Broncos suck. Let's ride. Injury news then from this past week. Not a ton, luckily, but good news. Mike White is cleared to practice and will play this week for the New York Jets. The Jets definitely need the quarterback help after what we saw last week. And then in other quarterback news, Tua is back in concussion protocol. He did not leave the game this week or anything, but he showed mild concussion symptoms on Monday. So he is now in doubt to play in week 17.
Tough blow for Tua, and I don't want to ever speculate on it, but I feel like because what we saw earlier with the Dolphins, and the whole Tua situation, it is worth noting that they have found a clip on Twitter. It happened around 2 minutes and 40 seconds left in the second quarter, where he gets tackled right after he throws the ball. It wasn't violent or anything like that. It wasn't like a missed roughing the passer, but he did go down and his head did smack the field. A couple plays later, there was a fumble by the running back. They were off. They didn't touch the ball until it was 2020. But he did struggle after that play. If I can pull the stats up right now, he was looking really great, almost averaging 25 yards per completion. And then after that play, threw 3 picks. So pretty big shift, what we saw out of Tua. So definitely raises an eyebrow what we saw with the Dolphins earlier, but as always, wishing him a quick and easy recovery.
He's not the only player to get injured in that game. And Cody, you're our resident Packers fan. What's up with Christian Watson?
Day to day. Good coach speak. Day to day.
Do you think Watson owners should be looking for a replacement for this week, or are you feeling confident at this point?
I think you have to be ready as the potential that he doesn't sit out, but this game means everything for Green Bay in a way. I guess there is a scenario where they can still lose this week and still make the playoffs, but they need a lot of help that way. A lot of teams would have to lose this week and next week. But with that said, we talk about all the time the Vikings have been very bad defensively. The second half of the season, one of the worst in the league. So if he's out there, you can play him, but be prepared for him not to go. Looks like it's flexor or something with the hip. He said he's good post game, but we've heard numerous times players say we're good, and the Packers are notorious for holding out their players.
In a do or die scenario, we'll see if they decide to hold him out or not. We'll know a lot more on our Friday show, so make sure you tune in for that as we get you ready for the rest of the week. I think that is it for the news for now, so why don't we jump into my favorite segment, Quotes of the Week. Leading off Quotes of the Week, we're actually going to talk a little bit of an on-field exchange after the Eagles-Cowboys game between Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni and Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy. You could see Nick Sirianni saying to Mike McCarthy, "You guys are a hell of a team. We'll see you again." So we know that was a great game. I mean, we'll have to see if both teams have starting quarterbacks if they do meet again in the playoffs, but it's still pretty much locked up that the Cowboys are going to have to get through a game and the Eagles are in line for the bye. We'll see if anything changes if the Eagles sputter down the stretch and do not get back Jalen Hurts.
How about them Cowboys?
Are you like taking on the Skip Bayless role of our podcast?
Yeah, because
Look, I just want to have my prediction from earlier in the season be right. That's all I want.
Okay, well, you can root for them, but not audibly on our podcast ever again. Thank you, please. But in all seriousness, revolving around the quote, I do think as a football fan, these are two of the better teams in the league, and it would be nice to see this game for the third time with Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. First matchup, it was Jalen Hurts versus Cooper Rush. This one was Dak Prescott versus Gardner Minshew. Obviously, there's a lot more players in the quarterback, but would love to see this for a third time. Hopefully not like the NFC Championship team, so none of these teams actually end up in the Super Bowl. Georgia's probably like, yes, Eagles in the Super Bowl. Maybe divisional round. That would be fun.
I would say so. I did come into this game saying that I think this will be the telltale sign of if Jalen Hurts should deserve an MVP or not. And I said if the Eagles lose, it looks good for Hurts. If the Eagles win, it looks bad for Hurts. But even though I said that, I think it still looks bad for Hurts because of the fact that the Eagles were so close in this game. The fact that Gardner Minshew was that close to still pulling off a team against a Cowboys team that really didn't have many injuries. So I think it looks bad on Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles team is honestly just stacked all around.
It really is stacked all around, but it's also worth noting that the 4 turnovers, 3 of them by Minshew, are a big reason why they did lose. But like I've said in the past, I don't care about the, talk about an MVP as much as I care about the Eagles trying to make a Super Bowl push as a fan. So, hey, we'll see. I would like to see this matchup again. There's a couple matchups I'd like to see again. Maybe I'd like to see Eagles-Packers again because that was a heck of a game as well. And I know Cody's Packers are still pushing for a playoff spot too.
We are. We'll see if we can. Maybe you'll just get what you wish for. You can get the Packers, Eagles, Cowboys, and we'll go from there. But the other quote of the week, which is always fun when we're talking Rob Gronkowski. Now, don't worry, he's not coming back for a Buccaneers playoff push. But Rapture was reporting the door is open for Gronkowski to unretire and play in 2023, and the speculation is that he would once again be teaming up with Tom Brady, which before the show, Tyler pointed out, why are we assuming Tom Brady is back next year already after he retired this offseason? So we could see the dynamic duo, and I know there's a lot of buzz about England, all teams trying to get back in the Tom Brady push, give him one like swan song up in New England. Kind of would be cool to see Gronk and Brady go out one more year in New England, as much as they were not fun to watch prior years because they dominated for so long. But what are your guys' thoughts on Gronkowski potentially coming back?
I mean, you want to laugh at it and be like, dude, Gronk, just stay retired. But I mean, do we still think Zach Ertz is a good tight end in the league?
Yeah.
I think so. I think he's still playing to a high level because Gronk is literally only 1 year older than Zach Ertz. Like, it's kind of hard to believe. You don't really picture it that way, but Gronk is only 33. He's really right there with Zach Ertz. I still think Ertz has a few more years. And there's some other tight ends in the league that are like similar in age, but a lot of them are kind of garbage because most tight ends are garbage. But yeah, I mean, I still think he has some in him. He did look slow in his last year. So I don't think he's going to be that big play threat that we saw before. I think he's going to be more of that like true possession guy, the short yardage, the dump off dude. Like, but you know what? It serves a purpose. If he wants to play, he wants to keep playing, go for it. Just fantasy owners, don't go drafting him in the mid rounds because you're like, oh yeah, Gronk's going to make a huge push back.
Late
Oh,
round
he might
flyer,
be a
but we'll
top
definitely
5 tight end though. So you can take
take
from
a
the.
flyer. Yeah, but don't draft him that early. No, it's not worth it for
And
that
he's
early of a
actually
pick. So
brought up a good point with his age. He's only 4 months older than Travis Kelce. Like that's a guy that we're going to be talking about. Is he worth the first round pick next year because of what he did this year?
and
But
the answer
throwing
is
in
yes, because tight ends stink.
right.
But
So getting a guy that's right up. Obviously, he's not the same type of player, but if he reunites with Tom Brady, it could be interesting. But we'll talk Rob Gronkowski if he is back next year. When we're talking about next season, preparing for that. But why don't we jump into Week 17 waiver wire, or as we're liking to call it, streaming wire.
so I have an article over on the couchgms.com. As Cody said, like we're talking a lot of streamers this week, so I had to throw a couple of guys on who are potentially in good matchups or guys that should be more widely owned and could be started, but are over 50% owned. So I'll hit those first. We can talk for a minute and then we can move on to some guys who are lesser owned. So my quarterback who's more owned is Jared Goff. Running backs, I have Jerick McKinnon for the Kansas City Chiefs, who's actually been on the waiver wire part of this article for 2 weeks, and A.J. Dillon. As we know, Green Bay's still in a hunt, and Aaron Jones is dealing with some injuries himself. We also got Cam Akers, who was the RB1 this week, so far at least, coming into Monday night, which is what? Wide receivers, I have George Pickens and Jacoby Myers. And at the tight end position, the tight end one from this week was Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, those are definitely some names to recommend. And I will say, uh, we are talking a lot, streaming wire this the last week. We do understand that there are a few of you out there that are in leagues that are either the championship round counts as 2 weeks, so it's double points. You play the championship round post 17, week 18. Some of you are just now in your semifinal matchups going into this week. You should change that. We've advocated for that all seasons, and that's why we try to direct it that way. But some of these guys you can pick up and add for down the line, and we'll talk some guys to add next week for the smaller population. But yeah, the biggest question mark is Cam Akers. Like, was that a fluke? What was that? Like, the Rams didn't have a 65-yard rusher. He had, what was it, 143 and 2 touchdowns, I
Dude, the
believe.
Broncos are one of the best defenses in the league this season, and the Rams have no offense at all and put up a 50 burger. Like, I don't know what's happening this season. I like full disclosure, we want to be the best couch GMs we can be, and typically we really know our stuff. But I don't think there's a single person out there that could have predicted this season going the way it is. So, was it a fluke? Maybe. Was it real? Maybe. Like, I don't really know how you predict at this point. In my opinion, I would say that I think Cam Akers is a startable flex running back, maybe running back 2 at best, depending on where you're at. I would not expect him to have the week he had this week. They're not going to be hanging up 50 points again. Like, it won't happen. So that would be my best answer is you can play him, but play him with caution.
Yeah, don't play him expecting 20, 30 points again. But his last 4 weeks have been solid since he started getting carries again after the Darrell Henderson cut. I mean, against Seattle, he had 18.5. Against Vegas, 8.8. Would have been a 10-point week if he didn't fumble. And then against Green Bay, 11.5. Like those 8.8, 11.5, you can get you that any given week with the amount of volume he's getting. But the 33 is such a crooked number in a bad matchup that they're like, it's making me shake my head too. And there's no way we can predict that.
It was the slime time magic of being on Nick. That's what I'm gonna chalk that one up to. And he does get the Chargers this week as another. That's a positive matchup. So maybe it'll be reversed and he gets like 4, but it's at least a good matchup. But if you want to check out why you should play those guys, check out George's article. But some other names that are under 50% owned, starting at the quarterback. Brock Purdy continues to put up points. He gets to play the Raiders this coming week, 27.4% owned. Has to be one of the top streaming options, probably right behind Jared Goff, that is over the 50% threshold as he gets to face the Bears. But Brock Purdy has looked really good, and I am so interested to see how far this team goes in the playoffs, and what does this mean for Trey Lance going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk about that more. I was not prepared to talk about Trey Lance today. We'll talk about that more as we get into the offseason. But Purdy has been that guy that is going to get you the 16 points to 18 points. He's not going to absolutely win you a game himself, but he's going to keep you afloat at the quarterback position, which is a lot of people need. At running back, Tyler Algier is now getting more carries than Cordarrelle Patterson. He has a great matchup against the Cardinals this week. He's only 17.2% owned. So this is another one that almost like Cam Akers, we've seen like a solid stat line coming forward. Maybe he's the boom guy this week. Maybe he's the guy to just get you that 10 points. We don't know, but he's definitely a solid play to go there as well.
Yeah, this has been a crazy year of just since you jumped into running backs and have a chance to chime in. This has been a crazy year of like no-name quarterbacks, like Mike White overtaking Zach Wilson. You have Patriots fans are chanting for Bailey Zappi over Mac Jones. We got the Brock Purdy like resurgence. Like, this is a crazy year for quarterbacks. I think we need to spend an entire episode this offseason on just quarterbacks going into next season, because there's a lot of craziness. I mean, beyond the backups that are making a name for themselves, you also have the older veterans like the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's, the even in my case, the Ryan Tannehills. Like, do they get overtaken? Like, we've got some big discussions going on. So definitely tune in the offseason. We're going to have a big quarterback discussion. We'd love to hear from you guys on what you want to hear. But moving forward, Tyler Algier has been doing great. Man, look, I just want to say, full disclosure, if you're picking these guys up, odds are you're not in the best position for your championship match. Hopefully you have some people that you can play and actually just throw in your lineup rather than having to pick some of these guys up. But depending on injuries, you might not be that lucky.
It's very true. And someone who you're going to look at the name and be like, what the heck? And it's same thing Cody did when he was doing the show by himself a few weeks ago. Isaiah Hodgins has jumped right back onto our radar. He was a top 5 wide receiver this week. He's now had 4 straight games of being solid. He did, I think, have 1 dud in there. He's the Giants wide receiver 1. And this is coming like a month and a half after he got cut by the Buffalo Bills. But it's exactly what the Giants needed. And now they're in a playoff race. And he's somebody who's getting volume.
Yeah, I find it really funny because, like, I just saw on Twitter, I should say. I saw on Twitter that somebody posted, like, LOL at the Giants. They really wanted to make a trade at the deadline, didn't do it. They really wanted to sign Odell, they didn't do it. And yet their answer is making a waiver claim on Isaiah Hodgins, ? And, like, they were totally making fun of him. And then right after that tweet came out, Hodgins just, has 11 targets, 89 yards, and a touchdown. Like, it's funny. But, I mean, good for him. I mean, maybe he really did just need to change his scenery. I still don't trust him. I mean, he hasn't had more than 50 yards in any of his last 6 games, except for this one against the Vikings this week. So I would definitely be a little cautious. But he is a potential name. Anytime you have a number 1 receiver, there's always the potential for points there.
Yeah, I think you brought the Vikings, and we've talked about it. They're the worst defense in the league right now. So that, take it with a grain of salt, but they get the Colts, which aren't much better this coming week. But I want to go back to Tyler Algier quick, because at the top of the show, right before we hit record, George hit me with this fun stat, and I kind of downplayed it. But I need to give him due that Kenneth Walker and Tyler Algier, who has the rushing yards. You'd probably think Walker based on fantasy performance, but it's actually Algier. Now, Kenneth Walker, I said, well, Kenneth Walker was injured. Well, so was Algier. Algier played in 1 more game and actually has 10 less rushing attempts than Kenneth Walker, and still has more yards. It all comes down to the touchdowns, which is why it's still scary to play Tyler Algier, because he only has 2 on the season compared to a guy like Ken Walker, who has 9. That's why he's so valuable fantasy-wise. But don't sleep on Tyler Algier. If you're in a keeper league, and you're thinking about your keepers, you probably drafted him pretty late. He's a guy that you might want to keep an eye on as one of your late round keepers coming into next season.
Exactly. And Tyler, you can look at your rundown. I want you to intro the next wide receiver because he's your favorite.
He
If you don't
is.
know who it is, it's a gym teacher. If that
It's a
helps you,
gym
if you're
teacher.
not looking
It's
at it.
uncle.
It's not.
It's
It's
an
not a
uncle.
gym teacher, but it's an uncle at a barbecue. That's for sure. Um, I like this man because you see the shirtless pictures of him, and you're like, wow, that looks like my uncle at a barbecue drinking a beer. Like he looks like the least athletic guy ever. Um, but he is athletic, and it's Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow has been injured for most of the season, but he has come back. And not only is he starting to make a resurgence, but so are the Raiders in general. Um, that I hate to say this, but like, who do you trust more in this game, Mac Hollins or Hunter Renfrow?
Hunter Renfrow. He's been getting so much more work at least this last week, especially. And I think this is when he's finally fully healthy.
So you finally think he's taken that step forward. So you would trust starting him in your lineup? I mean, he is 27.8% owned. So out of the not 50% or more, he is the most owned player we have listed here. So obviously some people out there trust him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of it's going to come down to people are going to feel more comfortable throwing a name like a Hunter Renfrow in their lineup than they are an Isaiah Hodgins or our next wide receiver, who I'll mention in a second. Like, Hunter Renfrow was a league winner for some people last year. He has the talent. The only reason he hasn't done it this year is because he's been injured. So if he stays healthy and the Raiders offense keeps clicking like it has over the last 5-6 weeks, he's definitely a solid play, and he should be, getting the value of right around where we drafted him originally.
Okay, I'm not still sold on Hunter Renfrow. Maybe I'm looking to especially this week, if you need a spot guy. So the next guy is Jahan Dotson. Those are the three wide receivers on the article. He's had some big plays. He's got a couple touchdowns the last couple weeks. But Isaiah Hodgins versus the Colts, Jahan Dotson versus the Browns, or Hunter Renfrow versus the 49ers. Obviously, this is one we talk about on Friday. But if you're thinking about which guy you want to start for the waivers, Hunter Renfrow might be third on that list.
So, but something you might not know, the 49ers defense we highly regard. They are actually a green matchup for wide receivers.
Well, okay. I don't. Maybe I'm just sick of the whole and the whole up and downness with the Las Vegas Raiders that they put up 10 points last week against Pittsburgh. They won on a super fluke pitch back play. They've blown like 8 14 plus point leads this year. Maybe there is some like bias, and I'll openly say that of really buying in to the Raiders. But my other thing is like Isaiah Hodgins. He appears to be wide receiver one. And sorry if you're watching on YouTube, Tyler dipped out for a second. He'll be back. Jahan Dotson, wide receiver 2. He's still behind Terry McLaurin. You could go back and forth. Where is Hunter Renfrow? It's still Devontae 1. Is he ahead of Darren Waller? Is he fighting for wide receiver 3 with Mac Hollins still? Like that's the other concern I have with him. Obviously, he's probably the safest of the 3. I think that based on name recognition, he's the safest. The guy you could be like, he might have 2 catches, but one of them could be a touchdown. Like that could be Hunter Renfrow, where the other guys could have 2 catches for 12 yards and you don't hear anything else about them. So I get where the safety of that could be. But I feel like upside wise, it would be the other 2 wide receivers we're talking about.
Oh, 100%. I'm almost in a situation where it's like, if you need just somebody to keep you afloat, like you have some of those big hitters like an Austin Eckler, a Devontae. I mean, having Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow is not a good example. But you know what I'm saying? Like the big hitters on your team, you need someone to keep you afloat in that spot. Maybe Hunter Renfro's a good guy because I think he's still going to see around those 7 targets. He has a shot at getting a touchdown. He could be the low ceiling, high floor option of the 3. But Dotson and Hodgins have a lot of big play potential, and they're the boom guys on the waiver wire that could put you over the top if you think you're an underdog.
Alrighty. And the last guy in George's article is a defense. We'd like to give you a streaming defense. George went bold with
Yeah,
the Arizona Cardinals defense, and it did make me chuckle because in our league of record, my cousin, actually he retired from the league, but he could have won his first championship and went into a 4:00 Sunday night game with a 30-point lead, and the other team only had the Cardinals defense, and they scored 35, and he lost the championship on that. So when I saw that, that was the memory I brought back. But you bring a good point. It's against the Falcons, and the rookie
Yep.
quarterback in Desmond Ridder. They haven't looked great as of late. So I do think it is more of a flyer play for sure. Obviously, you're not going to bench your top guys. The Cowboys defense, you're not going to bench them this week. You can put Philadelphia back in your lineup this week. But maybe you had Denver, and you actually thought it'd be a really good matchup last week against the Rams, and it wasn't. And they get the Chiefs now this week. Now, sometimes a new coaching change causes things to go crazy, but that's probably a matchup you might want to, pivot away from because the Chiefs can put up so many points. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, but I did like the Cardinals. Anything else you'd like to add on that one?
I mean, their last 2 weeks, they scored 12 points and 8 points. I mean, they're definitely a very boom or bust defense. It does kind of hurt that since I put this out, they did lose Buda Baker for the rest of the year, their star safety. But they're going against, like you said, a team on a rookie quarterback who failed to score a touchdown last week. Like, I think they're going to keep the points down. So just, hope for that turnover to a couple of sacks. They're going to get you 12, 13 points. And there's not a lot of, I don't think, booms on the wire that aren't widely owned defenses. So that's why they're on my spot here.
There's one, I think.
All right, hit us. Let's find some streaming defenses here to help the people out.
All right, 11.7% owned and 3 consecutive weeks of double-digit points, and facing the second worst team in the league against defenses, Jacksonville Jaguars.
They're the team I was going to bring up too.
The Jaguars are not widely owned. Like I said, they are coming off a 12, 12, and a 16 point week. The Jags are playing out of their minds trying to make the playoffs. They're making this late season push. They're on fire. And they face the Houston Texans this week. And bonus fact, if you are playing in week 18, you can actually start the Jags in week 18 as well. They do play the Titans. As much as I hate to say it, Titans aren't good right now. Playing a backup quarterback. Offense hasn't put up any points. And the Titans are the 24th ranked team against defenses. Jags just played the Titans and got 12. So, and that was with Ryan Tannehill. So it's right now, I think the Jags are probably your best defensive pickup, and I would pick them up and start them this week over a lot of teams, except, like Cody said, the big ones.
So let me just hit you with a hypothetical, though. And this is probably going to merge the rest of the show into a whole big oblivion. Our next player on the list is Hassan Haskins, the backup running back for the Titans, because the Titans and Jags are now in a situation where no matter what happens this week with them, that week 18 game between them two is going to determine the division. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the Titans, who are going to sit Derrick Henry. They're probably going to sit other starters. Are the Jags going to too?
I don't think so.
I don't think they will. But even if they did, how afraid of Davis Mills are you? How afraid of Rex Burkhead are you? Or Dare Ogunbowale? Or Chris like these? I'm not afraid of the Texans no matter who's my defense. So, yes, the Texans had a decent week this week, but even with a decent week this week, the Titans defense still had double-digit points against them. And the Titans had basically all backup on defense. So, yeah, against the Texans, I feel like it doesn't matter if the Jags sit some people. They should be able to still have a great defensive week.
Okay. So, if they do come out, I do think it is worth mentioning, and we can talk about it, but I don't want to completely discredit the Texans because we're 2 and 3 weeks removed from them taking the Cowboys to the wire and the Chiefs down to the wire. So like they have looked better as of late. They're still the worst, and they just beat the Titans. So like they have had
a little bit.
Yeah,
of course I am. So that's how things are going to go here.
We can still hear you, but you're fading.
Okay, well I'll fix that in post. Fix it in post. All my creative people out there will laugh at that one. So I think if they do end up sitting their starters, but I believe I have all the numbers in front of me. The Jags have an outside shot, obviously needing a lot of help. So there's a scenario where both the Jags and the Titans can make it at 8 and 9. So, winning this week for Jacksonville, they could still, obviously there's a lot of help. It's part of the whole double-digit teams finishing 8 and 9. So a lot of help would be needed, but I still think, and also a young team. I think they're not in a situation where they're as banged up as the Titans are, and no disrespect to, I mean, Trevor Lawrence has played lights out the last couple. If he started doing this 4 weeks earlier, he'd be in the MVP conversation. Uh, but with that said, like, there's no Derrick Henry with a nagging injury. There's no Jeffrey Simmons with a nagging injury, or 85% of the Titans with nagging injuries that you got to rest their guys to make the playoffs and get healthy. Like, the Jags are a little bit more healthy. I think they're going to play their guys in their matchup to make their defense worth starting.
Okay.
Fair
It
enough.
was just a hypothetical I wanted to throw out. Last person on our list is, I'm assuming Tyler put this on here, as your favorite player. And I don't think Cole Kmet's someone you're going to be talking about. Is that who it is, or is it someone else?
Well, first off, we didn't really highlight Hassan Haskins too much. Just so you know, Derrick Henry is expected to not play this week against the Dallas Cowboys. It is a good defense, but if you're desperate for a running back, I mean, Titans are a run-first team. Haskins should get the bulk of the snaps at running back, so he is a potential guy you could pick up, especially if you're in one of those leagues that has way too big of benches. He is 0.1% owned, so he should be available pretty much everywhere. But still not a guy I'm thrilled to throw in my lineup unless I'm desperate. But yeah, so your favorite player, I did throw that on there. And like, here's my reasoning why. So you have your lineup, and then you have a bench of 4, 5, 6 people, right?
Mhm.
We're couch GMs. Look, we like to have some fun. So if you have an open bench spot and you're not playing them in the championship, why are you stashing someone who's decent? Especially if it's not a guy you think your competition is going to use either. Like, you're not using the bench spot, pick up somebody fun. This is just, maybe it's the Madden player in me, because I know I like to do this in Madden. Maybe it's the wish I was a real GM in me, but pick up that guy on your team that doesn't get a lot of love that you think deserves a championship. Maybe Gronk is still sitting there on free agency in your league. If the site hasn't deleted him yet, and you're like, you know what, Gronk deserves a championship on my team. Pick him up. Why not? What do you have to lose? It's taken up a roster spot, but after this week, the season's over most likely. So go out there and try to get one of your favorite players a ring just for fun if you're not using that spot.
I like it. That's not where I was expecting you to go on it, but we're having fun here, and that's fun.
No, it's definitely like, I'm not in the consolation bracket, and I didn't do it, but I thought about picking up players that I just like rooting for, because I don't. And if you're not in your
That's how you
fantasy
drafted your
championship,
team, actually.
I didn't draft my team based on.
Yeah, you did.
No, I did not draft my team based on players that I thought they were good
He
players.
cut out. That's the perfect time for him to cut out, because I won that argument, and Tyler knows I'm right too.
Yeah, like if Cody is sitting there and he has a full stacked lineup for a championship game, and Aaron Rodgers is out there on free agency, and all it does is take up a bench spot that he wasn't going to use anyway, why not go get Aaron Rodgers? Get your boy another championship. Like, that's the way I like to look at it. It's not an actual strategy. It's not going to help you win the games, but it makes it a little more fun, and that's why we play fantasy in the first place. Even though some weeks it doesn't seem so fun,
This
we do
past
play
week,
for fun.
exactly. But all right, we'll hope Cody's back here, and we have one more segment left. It is our Thursday Night Football preview. Tyler is shaking his head through this entire bumper, and I understand why. Dallas Cowboys traveling up to the Tennessee Titans, as we always do. I know you don't want to talk about them too much, but take it away, Tyler. Give us a little bit of insight onto what you know about the Titans, since there's probably a lot of Derrick Henry owners out there who are now concerned about their fantasy championships.
Yes, if you are a Derrick Henry owner and you are going into the championship game this week and you need him for your championship, I am sorry. He is most likely going to be sitting. They want to keep him fresh, keep him healthy, so he can beat up on a Jags team in the Week 18 game, and hopefully make the playoffs. There is a chance that the Titans do still make a wild card, even if they lose to the Jags. But you need a miracle. The Titans are among the lower end of those teams. The Jags have a much better chance of making a wild card, even with a loss, than the Titans do. So I don't think the Titans are playing for this week at all. In fact, they have flat out stated that they're most likely benching a lot of starters. It's going to be a rough team. If you have Derrick Henry, put him on the bench. If you don't have a replacement, and there's nobody good on the waiver wire. That's where you go pick up Hassan Haskins and just hope that he has a decent game. Because even though the Titans, they're not throwing the game, but they're not exactly giving it their all either. And just because it's not a good situation for the Titans doesn't mean they're not going to play at all. But in all honesty, from a completely unbiased, like I'm not just trying to be a negative Titans fan, completely unbiased point of view, I probably wouldn't start anybody on the Titans. The only person I might start, and it's only because the position is so bad, is Chig Okonkwo at tight end. Um, Chig has actually set the franchise record for yards for a rookie tight end on the Titans already this season. He's getting used. He's getting used more and more as the season goes on. He's still not a fantastic play. It's more so if you're desperate at tight end. But in all honesty, I'm not starting anybody on this Titans team. My favorite play in the entire matchup is the Dallas Cowboys defense because the Titans offense is so beat up. But Titans left tackle is giving up the most sacks in the NFL this year in a short season. He has given up the most sacks in franchise history by any offensive lineman on the Titans, and he is facing the number 5 sacks leader, Micah Parsons, one-on-one this week. Cowboys are probably going to feast in the sacks department. Cowboys defense is looking good.
I don't have much more to add on the Titans side of the ball. But if you have any questions when it comes to any Titans or even Cowboys related stuff, we'll get to the Cowboys here in a second. Just send us a message, send us a comment on your social media post. You saw this, wherever it is, just get in contact with us. Cowboys side of the ball, then there's an argument of how far do you go in the pass catchers if you think this is going to be a blowout. CD Lamb obviously probably got you this far so far in the fantasy playoffs. He's going to be in your lineup. Michael Gallup is kind of a questionable move. You're playing Dalton Schultz because the tight end position is horrible. And both running backs, I think, are in play, especially because if they are up, they're going to run the ball even more. So Michael Gallup, like I mentioned, where are you guys at on that play?
I've been on Michael Gallup all season. Not going to change.
Cody's still not working, but he said he hasn't been on Gallup all season. Tyler, where you at?
Yeah, I don't love Gallup, but at the same time, it's a pretty bad defense. So he could be okay as a potential flex play, but I don't want to throw my potential flex play out there on a Thursday night game, especially in the championship. I'd rather wait on somebody else, find somebody else that emerges as a better play. I'm out on Gallup. I do like both of the Cowboys running backs, and I do like CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here. And I think that can wrap us up. Cody, do you want to try to wrap us up here?
I can try, but I don't know how well that will work for us. It does seem like I am back. So one, I apologize for all the technical difficulties on my end. I will have to get prepared and better back for next week 18. Before we do wrap up, I do just want to say if you are considering any players on Thursday night or you're looking into it next week, we're going to talk about it a lot on Friday, but just your reminder, don't get too cute with your roster decisions, especially heading into Thursday night. Don't be like, oh, if you have options, don't rely on Hassan Haskins thinking it's like the greatest move ever. Mike Boone, remember that guy?
Painfully.
The Vikings did the same thing. They're like, oh, we're not playing Dalvin Cook. This game doesn't matter. Everyone's like, oh, play Mike Boone. It didn't work out for it. So don't force anybody into your lineup and don't get too cute. You're in the championship matchup for a reason. Play the same way you've played all season, the way you got there. But that'll wrap up this week's episode. And as always, thanks for listening.
And I can tell you, as somebody that has played fantasy for years, that when you get to this point, you really want to talk about your fantasy story. What got you to this point? What happened? What mistakes did you make in the draft? What killer steals did you make? What midseason trade made or broke your season? We love hearing those stories. And I know that your friends and family don't want to hear it. You start talking about your fantasy season, they're like, dude, I don't care. Move on. But we love to hear it. So reach out to us. Let us know what your fantasy story is. Did you make the championship? Did you lose every single game this year? Either way, good or bad. Tell us what happened. We want to hear it. We'll share our stories with you. Maybe we'll even invite you on the podcast if it is a good story and have you tell the world. But either way, this podcast is so much more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Tyler, and thank you all one more time for listening into the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kurth, and we'll see y'all later this week.
Boom.
Nice.
Choo-choo.